Hello, and thanks for joining me. Normally on my channel, I like to share about life here in Turkey, but I thought it'd be fun to take you along on a little getaway that my husband and I had recently to Belgium and France. I hope you enjoy. As much as I love the remoteness of Dacia, there isn't a nearby airport, so instead we took a bus out of Marmaris to catch our flight in Izmir. Coach buses like this are really popular in Turkey, but it was a bit of a novelty experience for me because buses really aren't used at all in the US for travel. There are a variety of bus services to choose from here, and we went with Pamukkale bus lines this time. There was a surprising amount of staff on board the bus. Not only was there the driver, but there were 3 additional members on board who helped with the check-in process, passing out the free drinks and snacks, and just assisting. My husband always comments how labor is actually really cheap in Turkey compared to the US, and he's not joking. The amount of staff compared to passengers seemed a bit excessive, but they were all very kind and helpful. The bus ride was about 4 hours long, and it made a few stops to pick up and drop off passengers, and usually at these stops we waited for about 15 to 20 minutes. The coach buses that I've seen so far in Turkey don't have bathrooms on board, so this was your opportunity to use the restroom and grab a quick bite to eat at a cafe. Although it seemed like the majority of passengers used the stops as a cigarette break. After an incredibly comfortable ride, we arrived at the Izmir bus terminal. The bus line offered additional transportation from the main bus stop to other parts of Izmir, but this transportation was a little bit disorganized. We even considered just taking the public bus to the airport, but eventually our little minibus arrived and took us nearer to a train stop. From here, we had a short walk over to the train station, and then we also had a little bit more difficulty because in order to get onto the train, it requires you to use a sort of preloaded transportation card for payment, which we didn't have, and they didn't accept cash or credit card for just a single ticket. And we couldn't get a public transportation card because the booth wasn't operational. In the end, one of the guards that was working just let us use the train, but that seemed to be a rather large oversight in my opinion. Anyhow, we eventually made it to the Izmir airport for a very early morning flight. We flew with Sun Express, which is a sort of budget airline here, but it got us there safely and on time. They did charge for water on the flight, which I've never seen before, so just keep that in mind if you ever fly with them. In just under 3 hours, we landed in Brussels. We had a few stops to make on this trip in France and Belgium, and while it's normally easiest to take the train, my husband wanted to rent a car for a bit more of a scenic tour, and so that we could go at our own pace. The weather was a bit cooler than when we left Turkey, but I actually really enjoyed it. After getting out of Brussels, it wasn't far until we reached France. I haven't been back to France for about 7 years, and it holds a very special place in my heart. Now, one of the first places that we stopped was actually a Carrefour Hypermarché, essentially just a really large grocery store. And perhaps this isn't everyone's idea of fun when they visit a foreign country, but I've missed French foods of all sorts and stocked up on some goodies for the trip, and my husband was especially excited. He's a bit of a water snob, and some of his favorite waters are French, so he was like a kid in a candy store here. Oh, and he wanted me to show this water bottle. This is probably not new to many people, but neither of us had seen this nifty way many bottles are now packaged here with the cap that stays fully attached to the bottle. Sadly, in Turkey, there's far too much litter, and one of the things that I noticed being littered the most are bottle caps. So this would be a great way to start keeping things a little bit cleaner here. After a little stop at Carrefour, we made our way into the city of Reims, which is somewhere that I've actually never been before. Reims is in the Champagne region of France, and many of the best-known champagne producers have their tasting houses in the city. I suppose we could have spent the afternoon sipping on some bubbly, but honestly, I was much more interested in just walking around and taking it slow. We only spent the afternoon here, so I can't give it a complete overview, but I very much enjoyed the little that I did see. The city seemed orderly and clean, and being back in France made me realize how much I miss it, despite the chilly, windy weather that we had on this day. The one place on my list to see while here, though, was the Notre-Dame Cathedral. And this is probably the best known part of the city. This structure is much more massive than I knew, and it's clear now looking back at the footage that video just doesn't do its size justice. The cathedral is a UNESCO World Heritage Site and was built starting in the 13th century. The building itself is known for its Gothic architecture and apparently has the highest number of sculptures of any cathedral in France. It was fun just to walk around the exterior and look up at all of the detail. It always amazes me how much work goes into old buildings like this from centuries ago. I wish that sort of attention to detail existed today. What makes this cathedral so well known, though, besides the architecture, is the role that it played in France's history. The Notre-Dame Cathedral was the site of coronation ceremonies for the kings of France. 25 kings actually had their coronation in this very building, and the size of the building is representative of this, as it would have been needed to accommodate such large crowds of people. The cathedral was badly damaged by the Germans during World War I, and a large fire broke out and even melted its metal roof. After the war, John D. Rockefeller actually donated money to help with its restoration. Today, visitors can enjoy the beautiful stained glass windows, which are abundant throughout the cathedral. And although some of the stained glass windows have been replaced, there are actually still many originals that remain, which to me is pretty impressive. Some that have been replaced are even works of famous artists such as Marc Chagall. After a long day of travel, we called it an early night, but I have more from France and Belgium to come in my next videos, so please consider subscribing to my YouTube channel to stay up to date. And if you'd like to see more, please give this video a thumbs up. Until next time, à bientôt, and thanks.